It's time for a book haul. I got a ton of great books over the past couple of months that I'm really excited to read. I've actually read a couple of them at this point, so let's go through them. I want to show you one by one the various books I picked up, why I picked them up, and how soon I think I'll get to them. As I mentioned in the intro, I've read a couple of books in this list already. I'm not sure how frequently I'm going to do book hauls on this channel, probably quarterly. Maybe if I buy a bunch of books month to month, I'll do them monthly, but for the most part, I'm going to try and do this quarterly. So I might have a few that I've read whenever I do these, but first up, I wanted to start with Shadows Upon Time. I have not read this yet, but just this is one of the more recent releases. This came out 2 weeks ago as of the filming of this video. This came out in November. And this is the final book in the Suneater series by Christopher Rocchio. This series has really blown up in popularity. So if you watch a lot of BookTube, Book Talk, Bookstagram content that has sci-fi fantasy, there's a good chance you've heard of this series at this point. If for some reason you haven't, it's a space opera epic about a man who blows up a sun. That's not a spoiler. That's like right at the beginning of book one. He tells you he blew up a sun that killed a ton of humans and an entire alien species that was like a threat to humanity. And this is the story of how he got there and everything that transpired. And it's so epic. It's so fun, so epic. If you like Star Wars, if you like Dune, if you like eldritch Lovecraftian horrors at a cosmic scale, if you love space opera, and I've already said that, you're going to love this. It's absolutely worth reading. The prose is really great. Rocchio is a very talented wordsmith. It's a ton of fun. I am just about done with the fourth book in the series out of 7, so I'm getting there, but this will probably be a January or February read for me. But yeah, I'm excited to pick this up. Picking this up felt kind of like a Stormlight release or something like that, where there's a lot of hype, and I'm going in, it was like, this is one of those series where it was so exciting to go pick this up on release day. Next up, Saga Press was kind enough to send me a couple of books, so I'll go through the books Saga Press sent me. First up, The Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is the second book in the Hierarchy series. The Will of the Many is another very popular book here on BookTube and Book Talk and everywhere else, so you've probably heard of that too, and you're probably somewhat aware about this. This was good. In some ways, it met my expectations, and in some ways, it was a little disappointing. It's hard to get into without getting into spoilers for Will of the Many, and it's kind of a long conversation, but this is an ambitious book, and I like some of the risks it takes, and it does some things that I wasn't expecting, and I kind of appreciate that, and I had a lot of fun with some of those elements, but in other ways, I think it suffers a little bit from that decision too. I have a review up about this if you want to know my extended thoughts, but yeah, this was super cool to get from Saga Press. I really appreciate the early copy, and I did overall really enjoy it. Also from Saga Press, The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I actually just finished this the other day, so I will be making a review soon. But what I will say is, I really did like this. It took me a while to get into it, though. This is a kind of a weird book. It's structured as kind of like an epistolary novel that is sort of like a nesting doll of those stories. Like, it's a woman who finds a document from one of her ancestors, like her great-great-great-grandfather, who lived in Montana in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and he was a priest, and this mysterious Native American man appears who wants to confess something to him, and there's kind of a supernatural angle to it. And so we're kind of following this woman as she gets this document, and then we get into this preacher from the early 1900s. He's like writing his letters about what's happening, and then he's retelling the story being told to him by this Native American, and it kind of goes from there. It's really crazy, really good. Like I said, I'll make a review. This book's not for everybody. You might hate it. I know I have some friends who hated this book. I have some friends who loved this book. I happen to be in the loved it camp, but thank you, Saga Press, for this as well. And then the other book sent to me by Saga Press is We Are Legion, We Are Bob, which is the first book in the Bobiverse series by Dennis E. Taylor. I've heard a lot of good things about the series. I think it was indie published up until recently, and it kind of like Dungeon Crawler Carl. It built a following on its own, was beloved, and then it recently got picked up, and this edition's really nice. It like says Bob a million times on the sprayed edges there, which is fun. So I'm excited to have this. This is something I would like to get to at some point. I've also heard the audiobooks are really good. So Yeah, I don't know, and it's sci-fi, and it's supposedly kind of humorous too. And so it's kind of giving me like Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide vibes. I don't know if that's what it feels like to actually read it, but I will get to this eventually, and I'm excited to have this too. Something I picked up for myself, there's kind of been a resurgence of people reading the Star Wars prequel novels, at least in my sphere of BookTube and Book Talk. And a lot of people rave about The Revenge of the Sith, the movie novelization by, I think, Matthew Stover. This is one of the few I haven't read. I read a lot of Star Wars extended universe novels over my year. Like growing up, I read a ton of the Star Wars books, but I don't think I ever read the Revenge of the Sith movie novelization for whatever reason. And I've heard this is like next level. Like, you know, some people hate on the prequels. I love them in a way. Like I grew up with them. I was a kid when I watched them, so they have a special place in my heart. I recognize that they don't have all of the same merits maybe as the original Star Wars. There's definitely some maybe glaring issues with certain aspects of the films, but I do enjoy them still. That being said, I didn't expect this to be like anything amazing, but what I've heard is this is one of the best Star Wars novels, and that Matthew Stover really elevates the story and does a great job getting into the heads of all of the characters and explores a lot of the emotions in a better way than you get in the movies. And so I think that's great because Revenge of the Sith has a pretty intense story. So I'm excited to get to this. I've also heard this is part of what's called the Dark Lord trilogy. So there's like 3 Darth Vader books that kind of go back to back. There's one leading up to Revenge of the Sith. Then there's the Revenge of the Sith movie novelization. And then there is one that's kind of the immediate aftermath of like Order 66 and all of that. So I kind of want to read the trilogy back to back. I was hoping to get to this before the end of the year, but I don't think that's going to happen. So this might be something fun I read in Q1 of 2026. This and maybe the whole Dark Lord trilogy. So we'll see. I love Star Wars books. I kind of go through once every year or two. I kind of get just a hankering for diving back into Star Wars and the extended universe. So yeah, I'm excited about this. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you've read the Revenge of the Sith novelization and if it's as good as everyone's saying. I also picked up Brigands and Bread Knives by Travis Baldree. This is the 3rd novel in his cozy fantasy. I guess it's a series. I don't know if it's called the Legends and Lattes series or if it's an untitled series or whatever, but Legends and Lattes is really popular. It kind of kickstarted the popularity of cozy fantasy. I'm not saying it was the only or the first cozy fantasy. I've been told before there's other cozy fantasy books that came before it, but Legends and Lattes kind of is what made it popular recently. And I liked Legends and Lattes. I really enjoyed it. I'm not usually a cozy fantasy person. I tend to prefer higher stakes in my books, but every once in a while I get in the mood where I just want a little coziness, and that one was good. I liked the second one too, Bookshops and Bone Dust. About the same amount, I would say, maybe a touch more. So I'm excited to try this one, his 3rd novel. I don't know a ton about the plot. I think it follows one of the characters from Bookshops and Bone Dust, so the little ratkin, Fern. So yeah, I don't know when I'm going to get to this either. I'm not in the mood for a cozy fantasy right now, but as it gets snowier here in Colorado, that might change. So yeah, another recent acquisition, The Blackfire Blade by James Logan. This is the 2nd book in what's the name of the series? The Last Legacy. The first book is The Silverblood Promise, which I read it and I had some fun with it. I remember being a little critical after I read it, but with enough time passing, I actually kind of had fun with it. And I'm actually looking forward to diving back into this world because I feel like I was maybe a little harsh when I first read this book and I gave my review over on Book Talk. You know, it wasn't mind-blowing, and there are some things that I think could have been better for what I tend to prefer. But that being said, this is a super fun adventure novel with kind of like a roguish main character, and he has a sidekick who's this kind of willful, streetwise girl named Flea, she's kind of comedic relief, and she bounces off of our main POV character pretty well. So I like those characters, and there's just a lot of fun over-the-top fantasy elements. Big creatures, kind of slightly melodramatic plots, big cities, a lot of big fun fantasy set pieces. And so I'm actually pretty excited. Like, this is a good fun time. It's kind of like, you know, popcorn and candy type fantasy. And I mean that in a good way. Like, I didn't feel this was like the deepest thing ever, and the dialogue wasn't the best I've ever read, but it was also capably done, and it was fun. So I'm excited to read this. This will probably be like a January, February read for me. I picked up The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu around a month ago, and I loved it. This is a short story collection. I have a review It's either posted or it'll be posted in the next couple of days. This is one of the best things I've read in 2025. And I'm not a huge short story reader generally. I tend to prefer longer fiction. This is actually making me question that belief because the short stories in this were so good. A lot of them are sci-fi. There's some historical fiction or even historical fantasy. But Ken Liu is brilliant. The way he explores ideas and technologies is second to none. And he is so good at getting you emotionally invested in world setting, plot, character in a short period of time and then giving you an emotional gut punch. He can do that in 20, 30 pages and you'll be teary-eyed, 30 pages in. It's pretty impressive. So look out for my review. It's either on my page or will be soon. So subscribe if you want to see more details about what I said about this, but this was amazing. Kim Ji-young, born 1982 by Cho Nam-ju, is something I saw this recommended on Book Talk a while ago, and then I couldn't find it at my local bookstore, and I forgot about it for like 2 years. And then I saw it at the bookstore recently, so I picked it up. And I've actually now read this. I'll probably include it in I don't know if I'll do a singular review for it because it's pretty short, but I'll probably include in my December reading wrap-up a little more thoughts. But this is about a woman named Kim Ji-young who's born in 1982. And she starts speaking in voices of people, other women, living and dead, and no one's sure what's wrong with her. And then it kind of jumps back, and it follows a couple of vignettes of different periods of her life: childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, marriage. And it kind of looks at a lot of the issues she's dealt with. And this is very much exploring misogyny and sexism that women, especially in South Korea, have been facing for the past couple of decades. And I think it uses a bunch of these different vignettes throughout the life of Kim Ji-young to illustrate how bad it is and how many issues it causes for them and what it does to their quality of life. And so this made me think a lot. I'll talk about it in my wrap up, but this was good and thought provoking and very short. So if you want something kind of thought provoking, I knocked this out I think in one day. I'm a big fan of Kazuo Ishiguro. I loved Never Let Me Go. I've talked about that on this channel. I'm currently reading Clara and the Sun, and it's brilliant. It's so good. So I picked up another Ishiguro book. This is The Buried Giant. I think this one was recommended by Ramel Broadcasting, who's a YouTube channel I really enjoy. So I thought this would be a fun next one. This is, I think, kind of a fairy tale. And I'm forgetting the rest. I think it's an older couple. Their kids are grown, and they go on this kind of adventure. It's kind of their last hurrah, kind of at the end of their lives. And so this sounds poignant and interesting, and I love Ishiguro's work, so excited to get to this too. I actually got quite a few recommendations from Ramel Broadcasting recently, so the next few are all from his recommendation. I've had Haruki Murakami on my list for years. But I've never gotten to any of his stuff. And I've kind of heard mixed things. Some people love his work. Obviously, he's very acclaimed in a lot of ways. But I've also heard some people really dislike his work. I've heard he's not great at writing female characters. So I'm kind of aware of that heading into it. But he does magical realism, and I've heard he's great at that. I've heard his prose is really good. And I've heard that his books are just like fever dreams almost. And I want to try that. I like weird books. And I sometimes am in the mood for a fever dream of a read. I wanted to pick up 1Q84 because I'm an epic fantasy reader, so the big one is what drew my attention. I was like, I want that huge tome. But my Barnes & Noble no longer had it in stock. And so I'll have to venture out to some other bookstores that are a little further out, see if I can find it. But in the meantime, they did have the Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, which is apparently about a man and his wife, and their cat gets out and he has to go find the cat. And apparently a lot of crazy magical realism ensues. So this is kind of a lot of book for catching your cat. I'm interested to see what this means, but Ramble Broadcasting really liked it, and I'm excited. I'm hopeful that I will find things to enjoy about Murakami. Also recommended by Ramble Broadcasting, Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. I probably never would have heard of this one without his recommendation, but apparently Walter Tevis is the author of Queen's Gambit, which has had a TV show made, and he writes books in all genres. He's had multiple books turned into shows and movies, so it's I've heard of some of his stories without realizing it. Now I know the man who wrote the novels that some of these things were based off of, but Mockingbird is a sci-fi novel about an android. I think humanity is kind of on the decline, and this android is kind of basically at the end of humanity, and he finds another human, and he has to kind of figure out the meaning of life, something like that. I forget the exact plot, but it sounds like the type of thing I'd like. And I'm reading Clara and the Sun right now, which is another AI, android, humanoid type story. And so I thought it'd be fun maybe stack a couple of those types of reads and compare them and analyze them. So hopefully we'll get to this in the next month or two. It's not super long either, so excited about it. One more recommendation from Ramble Broadcasting was Vampire Hunter D. This is another thing I'd never heard of. I don't watch much anime. I occasionally get in the mood for anime or manga, and I'll like dabble in it. I just have not had enough time to really get much into that scene. So this isn't something that I was particularly aware of. And it's like post-apocalyptic world building with some maybe cyberpunk elements, and there's vampires, and it just sounds crazy. And I really want to try it. It sounds really interesting. I've heard it's not like the best quality like of writing, but that it's just a ton of fun, like fun stories, fun plot. And this is actually a collection of 3 books, like, so they're not super long. So I'm kind of thinking that like once every quarter, I might try and read one of them, depending on how I like it. I'll read the first one and then decide if this is going to be something that I continue, but it sounds fun. I like a good vampire story, a good post-apocalyptic story. So yeah, we'll have to see how this plays out. I picked up a copy of To Bargain with Mortals by R.A. Basu. This is the first book from Emma Sky's Bindery imprint. She is a YouTuber, book talker, bookstagrammer, who I followed for a while, and she started her own Bindery imprint, and this is the first book that she acquired and has published. You can get it at your local Barnes & Noble or your bookstore. And so I thought that was super cool. I don't know exactly when I'm going to get to this, but I think this is kind of like an epic fantasy dealing with intrigue and politics and colonialism and things like that. But it's just really interesting to see too, because I've been making content on Book Talk for a couple of years now, and seeing someone who has built a Book Talk platform kind of transition into acquiring and helping publish a story is really fascinating. And I'm kind of interested to see, because Emma Skies isn't the only one who's done it. There's been a few different content creators across these platforms who are doing this process. And it's really interesting to see potentially different ways of getting stories traditionally published than going kind of the traditional route. So anyway, I thought that's super cool. And this has a neat cover, and I'll try it at some point. Another recommendation from one of my mutuals on Book Talk and Bookstagram, Josh reads books. I think he has a YouTube too. I'll post a picture if he does. But he recommended White Noise by Don DeLillo. I had never heard of this. This is a literary fiction novel, I believe, from the 80s. I honestly don't know what the plot to this is. But Josh described this as one of the best books he's read this year, that it has some of the best prose he's ever read, like some of the best quality of writing. I'm a sucker for good prose, and I occasionally get into a literary mindset and want to read a good litfic book. It's not my main genre, but I do like litfic here and there. So I'm excited to try this. Again, not crazy long, and just with the praise I've heard for this book, I don't know, I'll get to this next year, I think for sure, but I'm intrigued. At the thrift store, I picked up a copy of the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, and I picked this up because I read Demon Copperhead earlier this year, and it was really good. It's essentially a retelling of David Copperfield, but set in the 90s, early 2000s in southern Appalachia, and it deals with like addiction and economic problems and things like that. And that was a pretty heartrending read, and I was overall impressed with it, and I just want to try more works by her. I mean, Barbara Kingsolver has been popular for a while, and one of her most popular novels is The Poisonwood Bible, so this is kind of on my radar. No idea when I'm going to read this, but I liked Demon Copperhead enough that I want to try more from Kingsolver, so this is probably the logical next read. I've had a few people recommend this to me as well, so yeah, got a copy of this from Goodwill for like $2, so couldn't say no to that. And lastly, I picked up a classic, Moby Dick. This has been on my TBR forever. I sometimes make fun of it because it's easy to make fun of Moby Dick. That being said, I actually think I'm going to like it. And I've heard it reads really well for modern readers. I think I'm going to like this, actually. I love whales too. Yeah, so I don't know when I'll get to this, but the reason I picked this up is because there was a sale at Barnes & Noble over like the Black Friday weekend where you got 3 times points if you're a premium member, which I am. And that's just an excuse to buy more books. And I love the cover. Like, there's a lot of different covers you can get for various classics. And I just love a good whale. Creepy whales are the best. Like, growing up as a kid watching the old Disney Pinocchio, and the big whale in that was like my favorite part of that movie, and just how terrifying that whale was. I've been chasing that creepy whale high ever since. And like, I loved Free Willy too. Free Willy wasn't a creepy whale. I'm going off on a whale tangent. That's not what, this is not a whale channel, but I do love a good, weird, creepy whale, which is another reason why I had to have this. And just the front cover of this looks great. And there's like a ship on the back. Yeah, come on. I'll get to that eventually. So that's it. That's the book haul. A lot of great books. I'm excited to get to so many of these. As always, I have more books than I have time. I should stop buying books. I think you'll hear this from pretty much everyone. I should stop buying books because I have so many books I haven't read, but I can't help myself, and I do enjoy buying books, and, you know, it supports authors and bookstores and all of that, so there is some good that comes out of it. But anyway, have you read any of the books that I just acquired? Are there any of these you're interested in? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know the favorite book that you've recently picked up. And once again, as always, thanks for coming and hanging out and talking about books. We'll talk to you next time.